Welcome to the Six Hats podcast, where I, Dr. Shami, a lifestyle and nutritional medicine family doctor, will talk about how women strive to find balance each day by juggling their six roles, being a woman, mother, daughter, partner, business owner, and professional. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Six Hats podcast. And today I've got a special guest, Dr. Indra Barathan, and you probably recognize the surname. She is my sister, and she's also a functional GP in the UK and is one of the first functional GPs who set up her own private clinic in the UK. So super proud of my sister. Welcome, Indra.
Hi, Sham. How are you? So excited to be here today.
Excellent. So we were thinking, what can we talk about? And so we are going to talk about stress. Now, what does that actually mean? And Indra's actually going to go through her journey of stress, how it was in a way affected her in a bad way, sort of physically, emotionally, mentally, and how she's actually transformed her relationship with stress and how we can all sort of learn from her lessons. So Indra, many, many years ago, I remember what stress felt like for you. And I've said that on so many of my podcasts, how often stress is normalized and how we just get on with it. We feel it physically and mentally, but we just push through. We don't even have time to stop and think, how can we do things differently? Because we've normalized it. But sitting there, we're secretly suffering either mentally or physically. Are you able to share us a story when at one point there was a tipping point where you go, I have had enough and something has to change?
Well, for me, I obviously started off my journey as a GP and worked as a partner. I worked as, lots of different practices, really knowing in my heart that that was my role. That is what I was put on this planet to do, is to support people using my knowledge of medicine and helping them to unlock their healing potential. I guess that was the way I looked at it. And probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I was sat in my GP practice feeling so overwhelmed, so under pressure. At that time, I didn't realize what I was doing. But now looking back, I realized I literally had to write down the consultations to make sure I didn't miss anything, because I couldn't process what was actually being said by the patient. And I thought maybe this is the time, that medicine wasn't right for me. Maybe I needed to do something else. You read all of these books saying, well, if you're not happy, then maybe this isn't the right thing. You need to change. And the tipping point for me came when I suffered from chest pain. And, being a medic, as Shami was saying, we kind of push through it. You think, oh, it's going to be stress. People are not going to take this seriously. It's just a bit of anxiety. So you know what? It'll be okay. It got worse and I ended up going off to A&E. And they actually took it really seriously. They made me do like echoes and stress tests and actually thought that, that there may be something going on in my heart. So laying there in the hospital bed for 12 hours, because we obviously had to do a blood test and then repeat the blood test, I had a realization that this was the first time I had actually stopped and done nothing.
Wow.
I was a mom, I was a GP partner, I was a husband, all those hats that you're talking about. I was carrying all of them at all times at that point. And I hadn't stopped at all. As you were saying, Sham, you do push through, because you know what? You're a GP. This is what GPs do. You're a mum. This is what mums do. You're a wife. So you have to do all of it. You are. And especially if you've got that inner sense of values and you shoulds, it keeps pushing you forward. Something changed on that day that made me realize that I don't have to be a doctor. I don't have to do all of these things. There may be something different. So that was the first time in over 20 years where I actually took some time off.
That's incredible. Wow. And when you really think about it, it pushed you to the limit that you ended up in an emergency department. Wow.
No, what I was going to say is I think sometimes, and I know I've heard a lot of people say this, you are guided, you're shown, what those little signals are. But sometimes you need to get bigger and bigger signals until you really realize that maybe there's something else out there. And for me, that was sitting in that hospital bed.
Wow. So what was the next step you took?
Well, on that day, I decided that I was going to resign as a partner, which was a really big decision. And I think I was already having thoughts about what was next and what to do. But I just realized that, you know what, if I don't listen to what my body's saying, I may not be here.
Yeah.
That's the sort of trajectory. We're Asian, we've got insulin resistance in our family, we have heart disease in our family. You just think, okay, maybe this is like the first sign. And if I don't stand up and look at it, no. So I stopped, I resigned, and I actually left medicine and decided to do an interior design course.
I remember that actually. That's true. It was an online interior design course. Oh, brilliant.
And that was the first step of me kind of, exploring something else and being okay to explore something else. I think we look at the world around us, and I was never curious about what else is out there. I was very much, this is it, this is where we have to be. And, I was on my path, and that was it. So I started exploring it.
So interesting you say that, because on this journey of doing all of these podcasts, I've actually met so many people who've changed their careers, from whether it's medicine, dentistry, or senior executive, completely transformed their careers when they realized whether they either reached burnout or they were just not happy. In these conversations, we realized how much courage you need to say no. It's enough and it's time to do something different. It takes a lot of courage, because we love familiarity. We love being in the comfort zone. And all of the people that I've spoken to, and you will hear them on the podcast, often say, oh, have I done the right thing? Because it's easy to know what the future holds. If you know what the trajectory is like, if you're a doctor or a dentist or an executive, you know what's coming up next. When you leave it and design your own path, you don't know what the future holds. And that can be quite challenging, but also can hold a lot of people back.
Oh, 100%. And I think when I hear you say that, what's coming to me is no, actually, I wasn't. I actually felt very clear. I actually really connected with something deeper inside me. I didn't know what it was at that time. I just knew in my heart that this was going to be good for me. And that essence of what that is something that I speak to all the time now in my practice. That gut instinct, that intuition, that guidance, that is so powerful. And sometimes you need to go through something that is so tough to actually clear your brain from all that thought, to hear that wonderful voice within you that's always been there.
It's really good that you say that. It's almost that you need a really loud signal to say, hey, look over here, it's time for a change, and you're not listening, so the signal has to get louder and perhaps more painful in order to do that. So what we're going to talk about now is, can we look at stress differently? Now, there's so many associations with stress. It's actually used very frequently in daily language. Hey, I'm stressed, or this is stressful. And it's often associated with something bad. Something bad's going to happen. But could we possibly look at stress differently? And I know, Indra, you've changed your association with stress. So it's actually giving you a much more positive response. How did you do that?
So one of the things that I have realized is, when you have that gut instinct within you, and you want to, like for me, start my own practice in a country that doesn't have a lot of private practice, want to do things differently, want to explore how your lifestyle and your environment really affect how your body works and how your mind works, it's very easy to be told by other people that this is wrong. What ifs, all of those kind of things. So I have realized that trusting that intuition is part of understanding that we are all okay. And what that has allowed me to see is the situation around us is made up by our thinking. So any situation that we are experiencing is neither good or bad. It is, but it's how we are processing that situation. But in the middle of all of this, I was still okay. I thought that my well being came from the outside, but actually, my well being is already within me. And for me, the external circumstances is helping me to navigate, helping me to educate, helping me to understand something new. If I hadn't experienced that, I may not have learned what burnout was. And so, what it has made me realize is that there isn't any. Now, I'm going to put a caveat in that because I know I was told once, what if somebody is chasing you down with a knife? Maybe that is a stressful situation. Yes, there are certain situations that are inherently needing a stress response, like running away from a saber-toothed tiger, jumping away from a car, running away from dangerous situations. But how do we then calm and become back into our norm again? So when we're thinking about stressful situations, I sometimes need to look and say, well, is that actually stress? Is that pressure? Or is this situation not going how I think it should go? Because we're the ones that create the fact that this isn't good enough. This is a failure. This isn't correct. We are creating all of this in our head, in our brain, in the way that we think. The situation is always going to be perfect for someone or something. And for you, should you be able to see what it's pointing you towards?
So, what I'm hearing is stress is actually dependent on our perception of it.
I think so. I think the way that we look at a situation, let's give an example of, so I'm staring out into my window at the moment and I can see clouds in the sky. I can see the leaves rustling. I can see a bit of sunshine. Depending on where I am at this moment, I could go, oh man, it's going to be so hot today. This is so awful. I'm really hot and sweaty. Oh, this is, whatever. But actually, if I look out and go, oh, look at that wonderful breeze. How wonderful that there's going to be clouds and we're going to have some rain for a while. So what's changed? The situation is still the same. How we look at it, how we process it comes from a whole bundle of thinking that we do.
And it comes down, and I think you've mentioned some really important points. Perhaps it comes down to our expectations of the outcome and how much we attach ourselves to the outcome. And I was having a great conversation with a colleague of how to manage expectations, just feeling overwhelmed that she felt she had to give more. When in actual fact, we just need to reframe that of this is good enough. This is good enough. Let's reframe the expectation so we can find joy again in our day.
What if each situation that we're in is absolutely perfect for us? So if we take each situation as a starting point of being perfect, how would that change your day?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's sort of like linked expectations, people pleasing, not being good enough. That's actually a lot of the time the drivers behind the stress response. And I know for me personally, what I realize is the feeling of overwhelm. And I realize actually, I just want to get things done now. And so I've got this, I might have various requests via email. And then I had to really sit and stop and go, Shami, you do not have to do that now. Let's put it into another folder. We can do it later. So I created a habit that I just needed to get things done now urgently. So that was one of the biggest factors where I thought that this is unnecessary. And that was causing a bit of overwhelm and stress. For example, in the day, there might be a couple of requests. I go, Shami, you don't have to do it now. How about later? It's okay to spend 30 minutes at the end of the day doing it. And that just lifted so much stress from me. So it's just looking at how you're processing the day as well. And what are our habits? What kind of habits we're using? And often it's just sort of subconscious habits. Oh, things need to be done. And whether it's meeting your own expectations or someone else's expectations. And often just reframing that expectation can lift a huge weight off your shoulders.
So, what's coming to me when we're saying about reframing, what I have done is get curious as to our response to a situation. So, if we are sitting in a situation where we've got emails and things coming up and I'm feeling a little bit under pressure, Before I'd be like, right, how do I do this? Let's write this down. Let's get this done. Da, 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 like you were saying. Now I'm kind of like, okay, where is that pressure coming from? What is my state of being at the moment? Have I not had my dinner? Have I not drunk enough? Have I not slept enough today? What else is going on? Because your state of being or your state of consciousness has so much of an effect on how you process it. So if you're in the beginning of the day and you have 3 emails, you'd be like, all right, yeah, done, whatever. At the end of the day, when you're tired, you may not have had enough to eat, you may be having a sugar low, depending on what you've eaten through the day, your ability to process is going to be different. So I now become quite curious to where my mind is coming from. Where is my response coming from? Where is my state of consciousness, my state of being aware of my surroundings? And that becomes easier because we're not trying to change anything. We're just becoming aware. And it might be that if you become quiet in that, there will be this little voice that will tell you, go and have something to eat, you'll be better. And sometimes I will go and grab myself a handful of nuts. And then I come back, I'm like, why was I pressured? It's fine. This is the answer. So becoming curious, as you said, is kind of changing mindset. But sometimes change can be an added pressure for me. So for me, just being curious about this situation and seeing what comes to me as to what I need to do has been really helpful for me. Just that understanding that I have what it takes for this moment. And that is another thing that I think has changed within me. When you said about not being good enough, what I've realized is I will always have the answer to each situation. And if you ever stop and think, you've always got the answer. And that is so powerful. Because if you know that you know, why would you be under pressure?
It's funny you should say that because my mantra, which I've developed over the years, is there's always a solution. But what I wasn't doing years ago was giving myself time to find the solution. So that created stress. I need to find a solution now. And then what I realized over years, I actually need the mental space and a clear head to find the solution. And so I would give myself hours on a weekend to go, okay, how can I find the solution for this? And after you find it, you move on to the next. And that's become my new mantra. There's always a solution, but we actually need to give ourselves time to find it.
What if the answer comes at the time that it's right for? Because let's say, for example, I've been trying to figure out a new role within our practice. And I knew that there was a role out there, but I really just didn't know what that looked like. I could have spent hours, brainstorming ideas of, what names are, what is the role, what am I really looking for, a whole kind of list of criteria that I wanted for this person. But I rested in the knowing that when that answer appears, the person will also appear. And then I ended up going on having a conversation with somebody, and it was someone that I don't really necessarily have conversations with. So I went and had a coffee with her, and she was talking about her new project that she was doing. And she goes, I'm going to be working with a happiness coach. And I was like, that's what I've been looking for. The answers that you're looking for is something that you don't know. So how are you going to find that? By keep doing more thinking.
So true.
Your thinking is what you already know.
So true. Don't they say the best times to come up with the creative ideas when you're on holiday is when your mind is most relaxed, and that's when you actually come up with the best solutions. You need a clear head to actually come up with solutions. And so I think a great idea is when you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, take time out, and that's the best time for, and like what you said so beautifully, that's when solutions actually come to you. But if we're so caught up in our head, we're not actually seeing it.
I find that whole excitement of realizing that I'm going to learn something new. I don't know the answers to all of this. If I knew, I'd do it. So if I don't know, I've got to allow the universe or the world around me or the person that I need to speak to arrive. And as soon as that knowledge arrived, everything starts to click together. And it's so amazing. the world becomes at ease.
Absolutely. And it actually reminds me of another few wise words someone once said to me: give yourself permission to play. And that's another good tip I use. It's literally the back of my mind to say, when I'm sort of struggling, like, do I, don't I, shall I go ahead with it? And I said, give yourself permission to play. So what if it doesn't work out? You're going to learn something about it. And I love reframing it to permission to play. So listeners, I give you all permission to play, because we don't always know what the outcome is, and it actually may work better for us than we initially think.
I totally agree. Permission to play, permission to not think, permission to just live and see what happens. Because there may be ideas that we are not seeing because we're not living. We've put so many restrictions and boundaries on ourselves. And actually, if we just let go and be completely present in this moment, what is actually stressful in this moment?
So true. And it comes back to, being mindful of where we're now, rather than getting caught up in the head of the past or the future, which is
Yeah.
causing a bit of stress. But Indra, I'd love for you to describe more about eustress. And I know that's a new term for me. I don't know much about it. But could you let our listeners know what eustress is?
Well, I did this as part of a research to understand whether stress can be good for you. So I'll have to get back to you on the actual research papers, but what they're saying is that there is certain amount of pressure that your body has to experience to actually do certain functions within it. And so that is part of that whole process. And one of the papers that I read actually said that having that certain degree of stress can actually reduce people's risk of depression because it gives you that sense of excitement. That's the same as stress, I guess. The same, biological response to stress is also excitement. It gives you that little bit of drive. It makes you go forward. It allows you to have a bit of motivation. So this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. Stress is neither good or bad. Having a little bit of pressure in your life actually can allow us to create change. So these are the kind of the positives of having a bit of pressure in your life. It's simple things like, if you are finding something incredibly difficult to do and that is creating the pressure, that's when you're going to find a new pathway. Who invented the light bulb? Who invented all of these things? Or sliced bread, as they say. There's all people have been under pressure thinking, oh gosh, this is so difficult. That's when that new thought appears. So if we were completely content and happy at all times, would things get done? Would things progress?
Would change happen, basically?
Would change happen? That's my understanding of it, because I think it is important to have a little bit of pressure, because if I didn't have the pressure, the way that I work wouldn't have changed in the last 5 years.
So
the
true.
way that I see patients, because of somebody finding this thing a little bit difficult or not appreciating what I was doing, I was like, okay, so why? What else am I experiencing? What else is there that I want to learn? So that is how I look at pressure now. I look at stress in that way. I look at challenges with excitement and curiosity to see, oh my God, I'm going to be learning something new that I didn't know before. How amazing is that? Because this is going to help me, and it's probably going to help the next person, the next human being that I come across. So I'm just excited now all the time.
I love how you reframed it to excitement and curiosity. And it kind of makes me think of frustration. So sometimes when I reflect and I go, that was so frustrating, that has to change, then I use the second mantra of, Shami, you need time to find a solution for this. So give yourself a couple of hours, the headspace to actually find a solution. And once you find a solution, it's actually so much more easier, more efficient. But I wouldn't have done it if I didn't feel that frustration. That's why I get eustress. That's why I get how stress can be a positive thing, where it creates a shift in energy to say, actually, can you do this differently? And the only thing I would add to that is that you need time to find solutions. And so, yeah, absolutely, stress can be a positive thing. And I love how you reframed it to excitement and curiosity. And I don't think we use the word curiosity enough, because often we're conditioned, okay, follow orders, follow guidelines, can't think out of the box. And often the school system, the university system is all about following orders. And are you ticking the box? Are you getting the A's? Creativity is actually killed in many instances. And we actually need creative people to find solutions.
100%. And I think a lot of us, the creative process is how we, even those people that are studying the mitochondria or studying all of this science, if they couldn't just allow and see that the amazement that is present in there, then, like simple things, like I'm so amazed that our body has a receptor for broccoli.
Oh no, I did not know that.
Those parts that are inside broccoli help our detox pathways. Like, oh my God, like, what? Somebody had to go, oh, look, that fits that. Where does that come from? So even in science, you have to have curiosity. And that is the key for scientific development. You get curious as to, well, why is this happening? That I know with our training, we're always told, this is it. This is it. But actually, the way that we treated heart attacks when we were in med school versus how they treat them now is so different. So it's just being open to seeing what's right now, what's coming up for you now, listening to that little voice within you, which has the answers, and it's always keeping you safe. So the only other thing I would say to you with the whole eustress thing, one of the things that came up in a conversation that I was having with one of the researchers in Australia, in New Zealand, she was saying that when they had the earthquake in New Zealand, those that went through the earthquake and then went through COVID had a better response to COVID. So stress actually allows you to build up an ability to deal with other stress.
Sort of build up resilience. Yeah.
Resilience, knowing that, I'm going to be okay. Because if you don't know you're going to be okay, you're going to feel worse. And so those people that went through her research study that had been through the earthquake, when they went through COVID, had less of a stress response than those that hadn't been through it. So that's really quite interesting, isn't it?
You've made a really good point, because it reminds us that we grow from challenges, and we actually need challenges to discover new skills that we would not have. And I always have this battle in my mind, because it's so nice to be in my comfort zone. It's just so great. It's nice to have no challenges sometimes, but I've got to remind myself, you will become disabled if you had no challenges. You would not know how to manage life. It would actually kill us if we did not learn and grow and with new skill sets. And so that's another way of looking at it, going, okay, so what is this challenge bringing to me? What am I learning from it? Because you will grow from it, there is no doubt. But often, and I often say to my patients, we don't want too many things at the same time going on. We don't want to change a house and new job and then getting married and having a baby all in one year. We don't have to do all of that all at the same time.
But the other side of it is, if it all comes together, because sometimes it just arrives.
Yes.
Let's be curious as to what it's showing us. That, you know what? You've got it. You can do this. You've got the answers. You've got the resilience within you. Because I remember the first case that I had in England was a lady from America who had sort of various neurological symptoms. And we ended up doing some testings. And the thing that came to me was, I think she might have Lyme's disease. And that's like so big. It's got so many, it's a bit controversial. Does it exist? All of this kind of thing. We did the testing and she did end up having Lyme's disease. And I was like, whoa, that's like a really big case to deal with for my very first functional medicine assessment. So I spoke to somebody and he goes, you know what? The universe wouldn't have given it to you.
That's true.
If you didn't have the capacity to deal with it. Keep it simple. Go back to the basics. and you'll figure out what the right thing to do is.
That's some really, really good advice. And now, before we leave you, any final words for our audience?
I think the one thing that I want people to kind of take away is, first of all, you're okay. You have the answers within you, and add curiosity and sparkle to every situation.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And before we leave you, Indra, where can people find you?
So my website is drindra.co.uk, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn.
Fantastic. I hope everyone really enjoyed the conversation I did. There was such great reminders. I'm going to have to listen to this podcast again just to keep reminding myself. Thank you, Indra.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy.
Remember that this is general advice only. Please see your healthcare professional for more information. So what's your take-home message today? Remember, it's all about progress and not perfection. Curious to learn more? Visit usawa.com.au and click on the Usawa Learning platform, which is packed with educational videos, including the 6-week stress-free challenge. Enjoy the journey.